Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. Good. Yay. All right. And welcome. Thank you for coming to the show, Christy, to the Dear Business Coach podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, and I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Me too. I know that I had to actually stop myself in a couple times when we talked before, so I could save our conversation for today. It's hard. It's really hard to balance that.
Yes, it is.
I actually was thinking about your bio here. So let me ask you, how do you introduce yourself?
Gosh, how do I introduce myself? I guess it depends on who you're talking to.
Mhm.
On a podcast here, I would say that I'm the founder and owner of a company called WG Content, as well as a new endeavor called the Better Leader Project. And I would say that the thing for me that brings me joy and gives meaning to my life is really appreciating the privilege of feeding into the lives of the people that I am privileged to lead. So really, that's the thing that gives me meaning.
Wow, you do impact a few people around you every day, and then there's a ripple effect, would you say?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I've thought about a lot over the years is at WG Content, those employees all have children and loved ones and friends who see the joy they have in working here. That's pretty amazing. And they're like, I want to work there. And we end up with a lot of referrals, and a lot of people come to us that way. We have a lot of people that have friends working here, and things like that, because that ripple effect you're speaking of, I think about like our children. And that hopefully the children of these employees and certainly my son, that they see that people can be treated well and you can still have a profitable business and you can, do meaningful work, and that hopefully those younger people will have a higher expectation of their employer going forward.
So you would hope, or you have a goal for seeing to see higher expectations from folks under you, younger than you, coming in behind you, after you, that they have higher expectations. Is that what you said?
Well, I'm hoping they do as a result of seeing that it's possible. You do not have to be used up and spit out. You don't have to be taken advantage of. You don't have to be worked to the bone, and you don't have to leave your vital parts of yourself at the door when you come to work. So, because our employees' children have seen that and they know that that is possible, my expectation is that they will have that expectation of their employer. And if they aren't treated well, they'll move on because there's just no point. You spend so much time working, there's no point in working somewhere that mistreats you.
Update, update, update. Now you can get 10 free email issues when you sign up for email at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Discount codes, early access, exclusive content, the magazine, and access to the VIP page, dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Well, I agree with you. Sometimes it feels like part of the job is to put ourselves aside, and that there's something to be said about going after efficiency that does not involve emotions, if I have to stop every time I think about an emotion that I'm having or thinking about how my day's going, I that might not be so productive. I don't know if that's good advice for me. I don't know that you were giving me
Well, I'm not an
it
advice
would.
giver. I only experience share because I don't know other people's situation. I can only speak from my own experience. And the experience I have and that I know from all of the things I've studied and learned is that we are feeling machines first, not thinking machines. So while we like to think that our decisions and our behavior is rational, neuroscience tells a different story. It's not. All of the sensations, the stimulus that comes into our brains through our five senses hits our limbic system, which is the emotional center of our brain, long before it hits the rational part. So, in my own experience, it's been incredibly helpful to learn how to get access to my feelings. A lot of that is EQ, the naming and claiming of emotions and being able to understand those. And then my practice is learning what to do with those. And it's all kind of simultaneous. It's all part of self-awareness. It's not really about stopping every time you have a feeling. It's like becoming highly attuned and self-aware that you have a lot of feelings and that your feelings are driving your behavior and getting curious about that.
Well, I like the word curious. That's a word that I have used recently, frequently to unveil for myself, right? What that's a starting point. It's a great word to start. Well, I'm curious about this, or I'm curious about
Yes,
that. And the the self-awareness component of it, I it seems time consuming. So I guess maybe it takes me a long time to figure out what is it that I'm feeling. So you said it's not so much that we're going to that I'm supposed to be stopping all day long, like I said, to
right.
process or something, but I feel like maybe I do have to do that. Maybe I need practice at
Practice.
using
That's exactly, yes, that's
some tools or
exactly,
something.
yes, because that, we can read about all of these emotions, all these things that make us human. We can listen to Brene Brown talk about vulnerability. We can read about empathy. But until you practice it, you don't know what it feels like. And that is the basically the whole idea behind the Better Leader Project is practicing, to your point, those skills in community. So then you can actually take them into the workplace. So you're right. I mean, I can't imagine everybody in the workplace, constantly being like, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? What am I feeling?
Mm.
But being aware of the fact that that's driving your behavior. And it's, when I look at things like this, Elizabeth, I look at it as a very long game. It's that whole process of self-awareness is like peeling back the layers of an onion. And it's for me what gives life meaning. I can never remember who said it, but the unexamined life is not worth living. That's my credo. And so it's something that I say you can't get it wrong and you'll never get it done because we're constantly evolving and becoming and changing, as a result of circumstances, things, all sorts of things.
You right. There's all sorts of things changing, circumstances happen, and that's you said that line before to me. You can't get it wrong, and you'll never get it done. And
Right.
that's definitely your line that I want to remember because I'm sure I will repeat that, and you'll be that person that I'll be saying. Her name, I know her name. Her name's Christy because she was on my podcast and she said,
I
you can't
appreciate
get it
that.
wrong and you'll never get it done.
Right. It's kind of reassuring, isn't it? Like I think, okay, I can always course correct, I will just, and I probably will a lot because, there's something I really like to follow Ryan Holiday. He's the Stoic, the Daily Stoic guy. And I read something of his the other day, coming back to your point about advice giving. And it was something Seneca was speaking to a friend. And his friend said, why are you giving me advice? Do you have your life all figured out? And Seneca's response is exactly how I feel. He said something along the lines of course I don't. I'm in the same ward as you, in the bed next to you, trying to figure out how we both can get well. And that's how I feel about the work that I do, the things that I talk about, that I want to be very clear about the fact that I'm deeply flawed and deeply human and I will mess up, but I can course correct and I can get better. That's that's really the whole push behind the Better Leader Project and behind the way I live my life.
Mm. Well, you're right. It's relieving
Yeah.
is the way it feels to frame this way. So now the Better Leader Project, you said a few minutes ago that uh, in community, it's how what's a way to practice. So
Yes.
I would be able to do what? Can I come to a meeting and sort of like get started as a new person and find community, or is it what does it look like when I start thinking about involving my
Well,
involving myself
I'm
in your
glad you
community?
asked. Yeah, because it's I know that one of the greatest human needs that we all share is that we need to know that we matter. And the interesting thing is you have to matter in community, right? You can't matter
Mm,
alone. So through a lot of things, life experiences, reading, learning, all these things, I came up with this concept of the Better Leader Project where we create small cohorts of maximum 6 people and have them stay together for a certain period of time. So far, it's been basically 6 months, but it can continue, and meet
mm,
twice a month and teach people how to actually live out the things that make us human. The meetings are very structured. They're not something you drop in and out of. There's commitments that we all make to being there,
mm.
to confidentiality, to approaching things with beginner's mind, like you're here to learn something that you didn't know before. And then I teach what to me is the life-changing skill of experience sharing versus advice giving. Because as we know, nobody likes being told what to do. That's advice giving. It's also criticizing. Implicit in giving someone advice is the thought you're not doing something right. Whereas if you experience share and say, you know, in my
Mm.
experience, this is what has impacted me, or this is what I did in XYZ situation, and here's how it worked or didn't work. That I have found when I first learned that, probably about 10 years ago, my son was still young. I think he was probably about 14, and it actually changed the way I parented. For the good, really, is learning to not tell somebody you should. I don't use that word, you should.
Mm.
It feels critical and punitive. And I personally myself am very sensitive to that. I'm someone for whom all feedback, good or bad, feels like criticism. So I'm highly, highly aware of that. So this whole experience share really fit into my life and the way that I live my life. And as a result, has impacted the lives of everyone that works with me and my family, and then also the people that have participated in the Better Leader Project have all said unequivocally that the participation in it changed their lives.
Yeah, so you have said a few things here. I'm looking at my notes here. First of all, I put a big box around the word punitive because that's a word that is specific. That's great. That's a great conjuring of exactly what I would like to convey with there too is I yes, when somebody says you should, there's a long history of punitive feelings, and I think I get triggered. And also you said, you know, your when your son was young, and I also thought, well, I thought you were going to say maybe like 9 or 10, and 14 is a really good age as well to think about how much that person appears to be a child and is in a very important developing space. And so giving allowance to feel ownership without criticism over one's decisions. That's something that
Yeah.
I've always struggled with, and I'm surprised to hear you say that you personally
Mhm.
feel that any kind of feedback is difficult. And
Yeah, I mean
and I don't want to think of
yeah,
myself that way, but I guess I do is
yeah.
what I'm starting to, I think I'm starting to figure out I'm a really sensitive person.
Yeah, it's hard not to. And I think that's again for me, been the process of discovering myself, my patterns, my triggers, my values, all that stuff, recognizing that. And this has been the work of years, by the way, Elizabeth. It didn't happen overnight. And
Mm,
it takes time. And I still get that twinge when I get feedback. When someone's going to give me feedback, I automatically think it's going to be bad and I've done something wrong.
mm.
I have a propensity myself because of my life to go into a shame spiral. Brene Brown says that guilt is I did something wrong and shame is I am wrong. I've worked really hard to overcome that. It is not my default position anymore, but it's still there. It was imprinted upon me many, many years ago. And so when I catch myself in that, I can be like, okay, wait a minute, just listen, just listen and let the person speak. And that is painfully difficult for me anyway, because I tend to interrupt people. And so I have to really, really work hard to just listen and let people speak.
Me too. Yes, I had an interview with a gentleman who's experienced in improv, and I think I interrupted him 3 times. The number one rule in improv is not. I thought I listened back to that conversation, thought.
Right? Yeah, I know. I know. I think it's really common, Elizabeth, because people on my team, we all talk about it. We all of us do it. We're all aware of it and try to be like, I'm not going to do it. And like when I'm on it, we're virtual, so we'll be on Teams calls a lot. And I've gotten really good at raising my hand because then it reminds me I had something to say, but I'm not interrupting someone who's speaking. But I frequently have to write it down because I'll forget because they'll keep talking. And then I'm like, what was I going to say? I can't remember. So I try to keep a tablet nearby with paper that I can actually write something down to remind myself what I wanted to say instead of interrupting. But it's a work in progress.
Exactly. Oh, and you actually you have a couple of places where I can see into your work, right? I know about the Better Leader Project, but how do I talk to you or talk to somebody about signing up? Is that something I can do?
Yes, actually, to get more information, anyone can go to christypretzinger.com. And there is a section on that website about the Better Leader Project. And there's an area where you can learn more about the project because we're in the process right now of putting some cohorts together.
Oh, good. Okay. My caps lock is on. Now, the Better Leader Project is, yes, one of the selections right at the top of the page. Okay. And can I ask you, did you do you feel like this kind of approach to your experience sharing model is something you would have gravitated to since your early days of the career of your career? Chosen this have you chosen this content to be an expression of something you've been studying for a long time, or was there maybe a pivoting point somewhere that got you here?
Well, I think that um, we often teach what we need to learn. That's why
Mm.
oftentimes therapists have kind of messed up personal lives because they really need to learn themselves. And in this case, I would say that this definitely was not something, a default position. Interesting to me is that I spent most of my life, well into my 50s, not denying that I had feelings, just like living always in my head and actually being kind of afraid of them. Like, for example, when I would go to yoga and you know how they do shavasana at the end of the class, and sometimes they would do a body scan and I would literally panic because I didn't want to go in there because I thought it was going to be scary. So it's amusing to me that I've started a business that is literally based on the fundamental principle of emotional access and what to do with the emotions that you inevitably have. So it was a process. It was definitely not, I was always curious, back to your point of that word, I've always been curious about myself and why I do what I do and why am I triggered by that? And why do I go into a shame spiral instead of just feeling guilty, like whoops. So just like exploring that has been the work of my life. And as a result, it has impacted the organizations that I lead.
Mm, mm. Yes, I think you. you've said this a couple of times, and I feel like I can't pretend to know exactly what you're talking about, but I have my own version of the shame spiral.
Yes.
So a phrase that I can certainly grab a hold of
Yeah.
mentally. And what a picture. A shame spiral. I wouldn't even know how to talk about that, coming into a group, for example. Is there a tone or a setting that I that is set so that I know what my boundaries are. How much am I supposed to share here, and how do I learn where to start? Is that something I can ask you about?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to share my own experience around that because
Mhm.
to your point, you have to hone your own spidey sense, for lack of a better word, about how vulnerable it is safe to be with certain people. Not everybody has earned your secrets. In fact, very few people have earned my deep secrets. But as a leader, I do lead with vulnerability. And what that looks like for me in the workspace is acknowledging publicly when I've made a mistake, that I did or said something that I either regret or it turned out it wasn't a good decision or whatever, because I want to lead with that because I want other people to feel comfortable doing the same. Because innovation happens when there's a lot of honesty and openness between people, a willingness to put something out there that might not be a great idea, because that's vulnerable. So in order to practice that vulnerability, I mean, in order for other people to do it, I have to lead with that. Again, this is a long time of work because I was one of those people, I don't know, 15 years ago, who would have gone to my grave saying vulnerability is weakness. I honestly believed that to the core of my being. And then when I watched Brene Brown's TED Talk back in 2010, I was like puzzled, shocked, watched it about 10 times, was like, wait a minute, what? And then I started really digging into that. I was so curious about it. And like, what does that mean for you as a person, as a leader? How does it show up in your life? I think the difference between self-deprecating, which can be kind of like a little funny, and true vulnerability, which is like, wow, I messed up there and I won't do that again. I learned something from it. I'm going to fail forward here and I'm going to acknowledge that I did this in the hope that you will feel free to share things like that with me going forward.
Yes, I hope. Yeah, I hope that's a goal of many leaders. I hope is that you want someone to feel comfortable sharing with you, and certainly, hopefully, in parenthood, that's also something you want.
Yes.
I feel that way, and learning how to do that is interesting too, right? You're saying or share experiences, and also as a role model. uh as a role model, you have to you said specifically learn to say publicly that I've done something wrong. So do is that advice that you were not advice is that something that you learned with somebody, from somebody, or did you develop that within your groups?
I think that,
Originally yourself, how did that come to be?
it's really these are really interesting questions because it's forcing me to kind of go back and be like, why did I come to that conclusion? And, I'm old enough that I have some books that I've read over and over again for the past 35 years. And I'm an annotator when I read books. So I mark things, I underline, I flag them. And in the process of writing your cultural balance sheet, my first book, I'm also working on another one. But in doing that, I thought, oh, I'm going to go back to some of these books and see what did I think was important. And it was really amusing to me because I find myself, pardon me, saying things. I was like, oh, that came from Eckhart Tolle's book. That's interesting. Or, oh, look, that came from Michael Singer's book. Or, different things where I'm like, oh, and then what happens in my own experience of this is that I consume a lot of information and then I remake it together in my head and connect these ideas in a way and then express them in a way that is uniquely me. I think we all do that, but that's my experience of it, of reading all of these books and listening to all these things. And I'm someone who can consume a vast amount of material, and then it's all in my head and I have to try and make sense of it, you know? So, pardon me, it's never an overnight thing. And in fact, it's ongoing, right? It's still ongoing. But I will say I can share an experience of vulnerability recently, that might be helpful to you and your listeners. Is that about a year ago, we at my company were having a meeting looking forward to 2025, and we were kind of strategizing about, potential risks, because we had an idea that we might have too many employees. Pardon me, I got a frog in my throat. Too many employees for the amount of work that we saw coming, given changes in the industry in which we work. So we were talking about
Mhm.
it, and one of my people on the leadership team, all of whom I value tremendously, and I want their input, and I want their perspective, and I want their openness. And she said, rather flippantly, said, "Well, we could solve this problem right now by letting 10 people go." And I, instead of doing what I recommend, which is access your emotions, be like, why does that feel like criticism? What action could I have chosen that would have put me in a position where I didn't end up having to be vulnerable and admit a mistake later? Would have been that, but I shut her down instead. And when I shut her down, I think everyone knows that's a huge mistake for a
Mhm.
leader to make for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is that it shut everybody down. So I implicitly said to people, I don't want to hear hard things. And that's a dangerous place to be. And when it came to the point we did have to do layoffs, even the next day, actually, I spoke with her and I apologized for that. And I said that was completely inappropriate. Really, I appreciated you bringing something uncomfortable to the table. And it was uncomfortable, which I believe is why she said it in that tone, because it was like, nobody wants to say this. I'm going to say it. And then I shut her down. So being aware of that, being like, I don't want to do that again. I want your feedback. I want the difficult things that you say, and sometimes we're going to rumble about it, and there might be some, disagreement as we work towards something. But making sure that people know that I'm very human and I'm very aware of making mistakes, and I'm fine with acknowledging them, even though it pinches a little bit.
Yeah, wow, I think you have demonstrated, of course, that first of all, going at the question the day after, right? Going to the heart of it the day after to her and saying directly, and so not waiting until a month went by or something and saying, I'm sorry about that day. That's something that I have done before, is wait too long and just because I'm shy or nervous. And just
Mhm.
like she said, something uncomfortable and just had to say it. And she was being really brave. And then you had to, come back and counter her in that moment, probably because you felt like you were protecting somebody or
Mhm.
something, or definitely the 10 people she was alluding to,
Yeah.
this hypothetical 10 roles or positions that might be eliminated, not people necessarily, but you
Yeah.
have the chance, right, to let that go and let her take the heat, so to speak, for
Hmm.
that too. So and so that ripple effect could have been really bad in a different way too, but you felt the pain and the immediacy of how that needed to be corrected. So that's brave of you. And I wonder, how I wonder what that 24 hours was like for her. And I wonder, after that new conversation, if you all shared any other thoughts together. So I think you have just said it, you didn't you had the tools, but you didn't use them in the moment. For a second there, something
Correct.
happened.
Correct.
And those tools were still there for you, even when you said to yourself, "Oh, I made a mistake." Do
Very
you
much
have,
so.
yeah, that's so,
Very
yeah,
much, no,
so
very
yeah.
much so. And I always say that trust is a long game. it takes a long
Mm.
time to build trust and you can blow it in a moment like that. Fortunately, everybody on the leadership team has been working with WG for at least 10 years. So we've all known each other very well and we can give each other grace. And one of the things I always say is that the only thing you can assume is that the other person you're speaking to or whoever's speaking has good intentions.
Mm.
And so I was able to correct that. I corrected it with the whole team too. I told everybody that, that is not something I want to do. I want to make sure that I don't shut you guys down and that you feel um, what's the word? I want them to feel incredibly comfortable bringing difficult information forward so that as a group we can collectively pull it apart and see the best way to solve a situation. And so I was able to tell everyone that, which again demonstrated vulnerability by saying that was a big mistake. It was inappropriate, and I sincerely apologize. You know, it's funny, Elizabeth, for me, as much as I think vulnerability is scary and kind of almost makes me shake a little bit, when I
Hmm.
end up being vulnerable in that way, it's like this huge relief. I can like feel my shoulders drop. Like I'm not putting on that mask anymore and pretending everything's fine when I know deep down it isn't, that I made a mistake and I need to acknowledge it. So for me, there's freedom in that acknowledgement on the other side of that vulnerability, which is what, again, Brene Brown says, you can't get to courage except through vulnerability. And I think that situation there demonstrates that very accurately.
Right. I have listened to Brene Brown quite a bit, and it is interesting the way that she ha has brought the idea of data together, with
Mhm.
how with obvi well, she's definitely putting those words together. How do we measure vulnerability? And that was a huge thing that she brought to the market, I guess I would say. And so you are echoing that style a little bit too, right? And so do you have do you find that your own feedback method for yourself builds from experience sharing as well?
Yeah, I think that looking at the things that I've learned and the way that I've changed in my behavior, um, it's really been, as I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's been a lifetime of work. I've read a lot of Brene Brown. I've read a lot of other people, and it's funny. Years ago, I was working with a coach. I mean, this is a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago, and she said to me, "You are your business, and your business is you, and it won't grow until you do."
Hmm.
And I took that to heart. And what I did as a result, which is interesting when I look back at it, it seems kind of counterintuitive. I didn't read a lot of business books. I actually started doing a whole lot of self-awareness reading, personal development reading, a lot of things like that, and really kind of because I knew intuitively that I've always wanted to be the same person when I'm talking to someone who's sweeping up the floor as I am talking to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And so that means I need to know, why I do what I do and explore that. So I've always been interested in that because I know that that directly impacts my leadership. Being aware of the effect I have on people, the effect my behavior has on people, that my emotions can frequently drive or do always drive my behavior, but making a better choice to choose what to then do with those emotions. So yes, I think I've worked on it for years.
I believe you. I think I want to ask you one more question, and then I have to let you move on and help everybody else today. And I was lucky to get an appointment with you today for to talk and record, and I want to make sure I say your website again a couple of times, even though it's on the screen. But it's ChristyPretzinger.com.
Correct.
And so ChristyPretzinger,
For you.
ChristyPretzinger.com. Yeah. Hey, I have help notes. Yeah. So, and actually, what we've been talking about for a few minutes here is the Better Leader Project. And so I think that's what I would suggest to look for first on the site is the Better Leader tab. And then of course you can look at WG content and read more about you as well. I Let's see. What's one more question that what do I have to pick out of my bag here? If I could only have one more. I think we've said it a couple of times, you access to your emotions. So practicing access to your emotions, and it's for you, not just at work or just at home. It's for you as a person everywhere, every day.
Yes, yes. Access to our emotions, it's all there. And the thing is that our emotions live in our body. There are more neurotransmitters in our solar plexus than there are in our brain, which tells you evolutionarily what is important, right? Is our guts. That's what people say, your gut instinct. I can feel it in my gut. Those we all have the access to it. I think what happens in my own experience is through outside forces, whether it's your family or society at large or whatever, we learn to hide those things. We learn that we're supposed to be a certain way, we're supposed to look a certain way, we're supposed to say certain things. And if we strive for that false ideal, then we can never really explore the reality of who we are. So that's where that's really where the rubber meets the road is saying, okay, I'm not perfect. I never will be. And because of that, I'm going to take a look and dig in there a little bit and see what makes me who I am. What are my triggers and why did that trigger me? And really learning that is so interesting that then what happens for me, it becomes amusing when I see that like, oh, here I go again, like that's just bugging you and it has nothing to do with the situation at hand. It's something totally unrelated that is making me activated or whatever. So yeah, I think it's enjoyable. I like the fact that I can turn it into something humorous instead of criticism. I've worked very hard on that one because I think we all have that voice in our heads that is constantly whispering nasty things to us. It's like, and we all have it. It's crazy. We would never speak to somebody else the way we speak to ourselves. So really working on that and being like, when I catch myself, it's like, thank you for sharing. Data received, ignore. And I'm gonna focus on the fact that I'm aware and that I am imperfect. And that's absolutely okay.
Mm. I'm not perfect and I never will be.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not even an ideal you want to aspire to anyway.
Hmm. No, well, okay, I have some comments about that. Christy, thank you for coming to the show, and you have been a highlighted guest this quarter on the Dear Business Coach podcast. Look for your magazine article, and I'll talk to you again soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you. You too, Christy. Bye for
Thank
now.
you, Elizabeth. Bye-bye.
This You've been listening to the Dear Business Coach podcast. My name's Elizabeth Walker, producer and host. Don't forget to subscribe to email. Thank you so much for being here and find one thing today to move your business forward. Contact me at dearbusinesscoachpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, you are a superstar.